Hey everybody, I'm Joey, and today I'll show you how to cook steak in the oven two ways. One for thin steaks and one for thick steaks. So follow me and let's turn up the tasty. All right, so the first question we need to answer is, why cook steaks in the oven? Well, look, I know that there's a lot of meat elitists in the world that will tell you that there's only one right way to cook and prepare steaks. But, that's absolutely not true. Now, there are some wrong ways, definitely some wrong ways to prepare steak, but the bottom line is that there are many right ways. I really enjoy a steak cooked over a hot fire on the grill. More than that, I really love all the company and the conversations that happen around the grill while that steak is cooking. But I know this sounds like sacrilege, but there are people in the world that just don't own a grill. Either they live in a big apartment community, or they're living elsewhere in the city, or maybe they're just getting started like I was 20 years ago. I didn't own a grill. And so actually this is how I got started cooking steak. I've already shared some tips and tricks on how to broil steak, but we're gonna add some twists to this. Look, I've never even tested the methods that I'm about ready to show you, so it's going to be us learning together. There's a lot of people that are just obsessed with having the answers, and the problem with that is when you know everything, there's nothing more to learn. So I think what's more important is to stay in the questions, and that's how you're gonna step up your steak game. So as I mentioned in the intro, we have two steaks here, and we're gonna explore two different methods. One of the methods we're going to use, I've kind of touched upon before, and that's a traditional broil method. That's great for these thin steaks. Now, the one thing I don't like about that method is it's really tough to get a good sear, good crust on the exterior of the steak. I recently received a product from grillgrate.com, and that's what it's called. It's called a grill grate. It's an aftermarket product that you put on your grill that helps distribute the heat evenly across the grill grate to prevent flare-ups. So I'm going to use that instead of a traditional broiling pan, and that tool should help us get some really nice sear marks. We'll see how it turns out together. The other method I'm going to use for this thick steak is a traditional reverse sear. Now with a traditional reverse sear, it goes in the oven anywhere from 200 to 275 degrees, and then you finish it in a pan. Well, that's really a two-step process, and what I want to use is I want to use that grill grate to try to create that great sear at the end instead of putting it in a pan. So as I mentioned, you can preheat your oven to 200 to 275 degrees. Really the main impact there is the lower temperature. It's going to create a more evenly cooked steak throughout, but it's going to take a lot longer. So I have this set on the higher side of that range at 275 degrees. Also, I'm not going to be able to cook these steaks at the same time. So I'm going to go first with the reverse sear, and we're going to try that method, and then we'll go with the broil method. Follow me and let's get this guy in the oven. All right, so we're going to go ahead and get the steak into the oven at 275 degrees. Quick note here, this has been salted and resting for an hour. We found out from a previous experiment that makes really great tasting steaks. I have it on a rack to promote even circulation of air across the steak as it cooks. This part is easy. All right, so look, this part is gonna take a little bit of time. The amount of time actually is going to vary depending upon a number of different factors. Look, not all ovens cook at the same temperature, even when they're set to the same temperature. That could impact it, also the thickness of the steak. I'm gonna check in on this steak here at about 25 minutes, get an internal read on the temperature. So what will I do with my time as this thing cooks? Well, if you've seen my channel before, you know that I like to grab a beer, and one of my favorite pastimes is searching for conspiracy theories online. Well, today I got a new one for you guys. Birds aren't real. That's right, you heard it here first. Actually, there's some rumblings that this coronavirus thing is a big government conspiracy because the pigeons were out of batteries, and so they need to take some time to replace the batteries. They need to keep us indoor. I know it sounds nuts, But I'm gonna do some further research and I will find the truth. All right, it's been about 35 minutes. I checked it 5 minutes ago and it was really close, it was at 118. Let's get a final reading here. We are at 125 degrees Fahrenheit. Now look, with a traditional reverse sear, what we would do now is take it from here into a pan with oil. But I'm gonna try something different. We have this grill grate, as I mentioned, and it's reversible. There's the grates right there. And this bottom part almost acts like a griddle, whether it's on the grill or in the stove. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna place this in the stove and I'm gonna turn on my broiler to high. Let that get nice and hot. And once it does, I'm gonna sear the steak on this thing. Okay, so that has been heating up for about 5 minutes now. Should be nice and hot. I'm just gonna get a little bit of oil on this steak, help create a nice little sear on that thing. We're gonna do it on both sides. Okay. Now, let's get it on the grill grate. Come on in and take a look. So I'm gonna let it sear here for 30 seconds. I'm gonna flip it over again for another 30 seconds and we're gonna pull it out. All right, guys, so, I think this looks pretty good. A traditional reverse sear, as I said, would be done in the oven first or on the cool side of the grill, and then over direct heat, which is that grill grate we put it on. The reason I wanted to use that tool is because I wanted this to be a completely self-contained how to cook steak in the oven recipe. No pan required. This is all in the oven, so it has a really nice crust. I might get maybe a little bit nicer crust with a pan sear only because you can really get that thing pretty ripping hot. But now let's cut it open and see how it turned out. What do you guys think? I think that turned out pretty nice. That's closer to a medium temperature. I pulled it out at 125 degrees, got a little additional heat. I seared it for 30 seconds per side. And again, I did throw down some oil on it before I dropped it on the grill grate in there, just to help promote that really nice sear. One of the neat things about that reverse sear, one of its advantages is the clear end-to-end doneness. We get much less of this exterior, which is well done. So that's really a big advantage. Look, I know this is gonna taste delicious. I'll do a taste test just because it's hot steak and it's sitting right in front of me and I truly can't resist. Man, that's the thing about filet mignon. It is so tender. I'm talking melt in your mouth tender, and that's one of the reasons it's one of the most expensive cuts of steak you can buy. Look, this isn't a taste test. This is a how to cook steak in the oven recipe. As I promised you at the beginning, we've done the thick steak. Now, let me grab that thin steak and I'll be right back. Okay, so what I've done now is here we have our thin steak, and this is a New York strip steak. What I did after I was done eating that delicious filet mignon was I took that grill grate and I flipped it over. I have that thing broiling, getting nice and hot. So while that's heating up, I'm gonna go ahead and hit both sides of this again with just a little bit of oil to help promote that nice sear. Okay, so before I drop that in, come on over here and take a look at these grill grates while they're heating up. Okay, so this steak right here, this thin steak, New York strip, it's probably about an inch thick, maybe even if that. I think it turned out great. You see we got some really nice sear marks here. The other thing is when I've broiled strips in the past on a broiling pan, I've needed to score the fat, keep it from curling up. I explained that in another video. So it has a really, I think, a much nicer crust than we get with a broiling pan. I think that's because those grill grates just get so hot and distribute that heat nice and even. You know, I've always believed in being authentic with you guys and sharing authentic results. One thing I'd probably do different with this is I definitely needed a pan that was long enough to cover the full grill grate. I'll be doing a little bit of oven cleanup there because unlike the reverse sear, which keeps all the juices more or less trapped in because of the slow cooking process, this hot and fast process results in much more juice, and some of that ran out onto the bottom of the oven. So that's the first thing. The other thing is, while I really strove to get these nice sear marks, I mean, it's not the diamond, I didn't twist it around and all that stuff. It was a lot of work with it being in there, and it's a really short cook. This steak was cooked in 4.5 minutes, but I think if I did this again with a thin steak, I would still use that flat side of the grill grate. I think we would have gotten a much nicer crust. Now, with that said, let's see how it looks. Oh, and one more thing I want to say about broiling steaks hot and fast. It's really just tough to get a read on the temperature. You can't plug your instant read thermometer in there like you can on the skillet because it is so hot in there. So it really comes down to kind of perfecting this method. And I'll be honest, I screwed up a lot of broiled steaks when I was in my early 20s. This thing took about 4.5 minutes. Well, let's see how it turned out. Okay, look at that. So the one thing I think you'll notice is because it was hot and fast, we don't have as much edge-to-edge pinkness, but I'd call this a medium, maybe a medium well, somewhere in that range. Let's take another cut down here. It's a little bit thicker, see if we get some different results. So yeah, you'll see a little bit better color down here, but as I was saying with that reverse sear, that's where you get that full end-to-end. See how it tastes. Look everyone, it's a really great tasting steak. I think what we've shown here more than anything is that there are multiple right ways to cook and prepare steak. It really ultimately comes down to the tools you have available to you in your kitchen. Yes, a grill is nice, as I talked about earlier, but use what you have, get creative, and the most important thing is that you like the outcome. Speaking of liking the outcome, if you like this video, you know the drill. Go ahead and hit that big thumbs up like button, or even better, subscribe to our channel, which goes a long way to supporting our channel so we can continue to cook meat made easy. I'll see you guys next time. I'm gonna get back to this steak.